priests and the elders of the people met in council to bring about the death of Jesus. They had him bound and led him away to hand him over to Pilate, the governor. When he found that Jesus had been condemned, Judas, his betrayer, was filled with remorse and took the 30 silver pieces back to the chief priests and elders, saying, "I have sinned. I have betrayed innocent blood." They replied, "What is that to us? That's your concern." And flinging down the silver pieces in the sanctuary, he made off and hanged himself. The chief priests picked up the silver pieces and said, "It is against the law to put this into the treasury. It's blood money." So they discussed the matter and bought the potter's field with it as a graveyard for foreigners. And this is why the field is called the Field of Blood, even today. The words of the prophet Jeremiah were then fulfilled. And they took the 30 silver pieces, the sum at which the precious one was pierced by children of Israel, and they gave them for the potter's field, just as the Lord directed me. Jesus then was brought before Pontius Pilate, the governor. And the governor put him this question, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus replied, "It is you who say it." But when he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he refused to answer at all. Pilate then said to him, "Do you not hear how many charges they have brought against you?" But to the governor's complete amazement, he offered no reply to any of the charges. At festival time, it was the governor's practice to release a prisoner for the people, anyone they chose. Now, there was at that time a notorious prisoner whose name was Barabbas. So when the crowd gathered, Pilate said to them, "Which do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?" For Pilate knew it was out of jealousy that they had handed him over. Now, as he was seated in the chair of judgment, his wife sent him a message, "Have nothing to do with that man. I have been upset all day about a dream I had about him." The chief priests and the elders, however, had persuaded the crowd to demand the release of Barabbas and the execution of Jesus. So when the governor spoke and asked them, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "What am I to do with Jesus, who is called Christ?" They all said, "Let him be crucified." Pilate asked, "What? What wrong has he done?" But they shouted all the louder, "Let him be crucified." Then Pilate saw that he was making no impression, that in fact a riot was imminent. So he took some water, washed his hands in front of the crowd, and said, "I am innocent of this man's blood. It's on your concern." And the people, to a man, shouted back, "His blood be on us and on our children." Then he released Barabbas for them. He ordered Jesus to first be scourged and then handed him over to be crucified. The governor's soldiers took Jesus with them into the praetorium and collected the whole cohort around him. Then they stripped him and made him wear a scarlet cloak. And having twisted some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head and placed a reed in his hand. To make fun of him, they knelt to him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head with it. And when they had finished making fun of him, they took off the cloak and dressed him in his own clothes and led him away to crucify him. On their way out, they came across a man from Cyrene, Simon by name, and enlisted him to carry his cross. When they had reached a place called Golgotha, that is, the place of the skull, they gave him wine to drink mixed with gall, which he tasted but refused to drink. When they had finished crucifying him, they shared out his clothing by casting lots, and then sat down and stayed there, keeping guard over him. Above his head was placed the charge against him. It read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." At the same time, 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. The passers-by jeered at him. They shook their heads and said, "So you would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days? Then save yourself. If you are God's son, come down from the cross." The chief priests with the scribes and elders mocked him in the same way, saying, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross now, and we'll believe in him. He puts his trust in God, now let God rescue him if he wants him. For he did say, 'I am the Son of God.'" Even the robbers who were crucified with him taunted him in the same way. From the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice,
"Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani."
That is, my God, why have you deserted me?" When some of those who stood there heard this, they said, "The man is calling on Elijah." And one of them quickly ran to get a sponge, which he dipped in vinegar and put it on a reed, gave it to him to drink. The rest of them said, "Wait, see if Elijah will come to save him." But Jesus, again crying out in a loud voice, yielded up his spirit. All those here now kneeling in veneration.
Ed ecco il velo del tempio.
At that, the veil of the temple was torn in 2 from top to bottom. The earth quaked. The rocks were split. Tombs were opened, and the bodies of many holy men and women rose from the dead. And these, after his resurrection, came out of the tombs, entered the holy city, and appeared to a number of people. Meanwhile, the centurion, together with the others guarding Jesus, had seen the earthquake and all that was taking place, and they were terrified and said, "In truth, this was a Son of God." And many women were there, watching from a distance, the same women who had followed Jesus from Galilee and looked after him. Among them were Mary of Magdala, Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons.
giunse un uomo ricco.
When it was evening, there came a rich man of Arimathea called Joseph,
Era
who
divenuto.
had himself become a disciple of Jesus.
Si presentò a Pilato.
This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus.
Pilato allora ordinò che gli fosse
Pilate thereupon ordered it to be handed over.
prese il corpo,
So Jesus took the body, wrapped it in a clean shroud, and put it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out of the rock.
rotolata poi
He then rolled a large stone across the entrance of the tomb and went away.
sedute di fronte alla
Now Mary of Magdala and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite the sepulchre.
Il giorno seguente,
Next day,
dopo la
that is, when preparation day was over,
i capi
the chief priests and the Pharisees went in a body to Pilate and said to him, Your Excellency,
che quell'impossibile
we recall that this impostor said, while he was still alive, After 3 days I will rise again. Therefore, give the order to have the sepulchre kept secure until the 3rd day, for fear his disciples come and steal away and tell the people, He has been risen from the dead. This last piece of fraud would be worse than what went before.
Pilato disse loro.
Pilate said to them, You may have your guards. Go and make all as secure as you know how.
Essi andarono
So they went and made the sepulchre secure, putting seals on the stones and mounting a guard.
Parola del Signore.
We gaze on the miraculous crucifix from the Church of St. Marcello as we await our Holy Father's homily. Although no one is here, these words are being broadcast to millions and millions throughout the world.
Gesù svuotò se stesso, assumendo una condizione di servo.
Jesus emptied himself, taking the form of a servant. Let us allow these words of the Apostle Paul to lead us into these holy days, when the Word of God, like a refrain, presents Jesus as servant. On Holy Thursday, he is portrayed as the servant who washes the feet of his disciples. On Good Friday, he is presented as the suffering and victorious servant. And tomorrow we will hear the prophecy of Isaiah about him. Behold my servant, whom I uphold. God saved us by serving us. We often think we are the ones who serve God. No. He is the one who freely chose to serve us, for he loved us first. It is difficult to love and not be loved in return. And it is even more difficult to serve if we do not let ourselves be served by God. But there's a question, how did the Lord serve us? By